We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 43b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had learned from a pasuk that the sons do not inherit the zechus that the father has in his daughter. His sons do not inherit that zechus. And the Gemara understood that meant to say that the earnings, which normally go from the daughter to the father, they don't go from the daughter or from the sister to her brother. So it's referring to her Ma'aseh Yadayim, to her earnings. And the Gemara had suggested, well, how do you know the pasuk's referring to that? Maybe it's referring to other payments that generally go to the father, like the payment that's made for a seduction or other kanasos or other chavolos. Then the Gemara says, well, why did we even include chavolos in the list? The chavolos don't go to the father. So why, when we made the suggestion that maybe the pasuk is referring to these other things, why did we include chavolos? And so the Gemara now answers, there is a case of chavolos, there's a case of wounds where the payment actually would go to the father, and that's why the Gemara had suggested that maybe that's what the pasuk is referring to. What would be that case? Shepatza b'fanah. The case would be, let's say he wounds her in her face. In that case, the payment actually would not go to her, it would go to her father. And again, that's why the Gemara suggested maybe the pasuk is referring to that kind of a zechus that the father has in the daughter. Rashi over here says shapatza b'faneh the afchasam mikaspa. The idea is that when you hit her in the face, so then it actually lowers her value. She doesn't look the same. The isei la'av dileu. If the father would be around, he would actually get that payment. That's considered his loss. The hayesh lo b'mecher, because he has the ability to sell her, so he has that value, so to speak, with him, and therefore he would get paid that amount. And that's why the Gemara had suggested maybe that's what the pasuk is referring to. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav. Rav Zera says in the Amar Rav Masna. Rav Zera says in the name of Rav Masna, Amar Rav in the name of Rav. V'yamri lo Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Masna, Amar Rav. And some people say it's Rabbi and not Rav Zera. It's Rabbi Zera says in the name of Rav Masna in the name of Rav. Rashi over here explains, Amar Rav Zera, V'yamri lo Amar Rabbi Zera. What's going on here with two versions of Rav Zera or Rabbi Zera? Who Rabbi Zera, who Rav Zera? It's all the same person. Ela beBavel, Mekami de Salak l'Arad Yisrael, Lekami de Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Zera, he started off in Bavel and then he went to Eretz Yisrael to Rabbi Yochanan. V'ain smicha beBavel, and there's no smicha in Bavel, so have a karilei Rav Zera, so they called him Rav Zera in Bavel where there was no smicha. Uvah when it comes to this particular teaching of Rav Zera, ikol amadam v'kami de samchu amra. Some people say he said over the teaching before he got smicha. V'ikol amadam or basar de samchu amra. And some people say he said over the teaching after. So that explains the two versions of the Gemara. In any case, the Gemara says that Rav Zera said again in the name of Rav Mas, in the name of Rav, Bas hani zones mino achen. If you have a daughter that's being supported by her brothers, Maise yodel liatzma. Her earnings go to herself, and the Gemara quotes the pasuk from before. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, "V'snachaltem osam levnechem acharechem." It's the avodim that they're inherited by your sons after you. Osam levnechem v'lo benosechem levnechem. They get inherited by the sons, but your daughters are not inherited by your sons. In other words, the brothers, they don't inherit whatever zechus the father had in the daughter. The brothers don't get in their sister. Magid she'en adam morish zechus bito livno. It teaches that a person does not give as an inheritance the merit that he has in his daughter over to his son. And the Gemara continues, Amr le Avimi bar Papi. Avimi bar Papi said back to him, Shekod Amra. Shekod is the one who said this over. And the Gemara says, Shekod Manu. Who exactly do we refer to as the Shakud? And the Gemara says, Shmuel. That's a reference to Shmuel. And Rashi over here explains, Shmuel have a kari le shakud. Shmuel was called shakud al shum de hilchisa kevase bedine. The reason is because the halacha follows him when it comes to monetary cases. V'shoket al devar of lo'omrim ke'alchasa. He was careful over what he said in order to make sure he said it lehalacha. So that's what Avime bar Papi was saying, that this halacha that you just said, it was said over by Shmuel. And the Gemara says, what do you mean it was said over by Shmuel? Harav Amr. We just quoted it in the name of Rav. That's what we just said. We said that in the name of Rav, he said this halacha. So rather what he meant to say was af Shakud Amra. Even the Shakud said this halacha. Even Shmuel agreed with this halacha. Amar Mar bar Amemar l'Ravashi. Mar bar Amemar said to Ravashi, Hachi Amri Nahardoi. Here's what they said in Nahardoi. Hilchasa kevase de Rav Sheshes. The halacha is like Rav Sheshes. Rashi over here says, Ke Rav Sheshes de Pashut Le'el. He's the one that said earlier, Bito Mal Manasu. He learned out the daughter widow. V'yamar Ma'aseh Adel Achen. He said on the contrary, her earnings actually do go to her brothers. So here he's saying over the halacha is not that she keeps her earnings, but rather it goes to the brothers. That's Hilchasa Kavase de Rav Sheshes. Rav Ashi Amar, but Rav Ashi says Hilchasa Kavase de Rav. The halacha is like Rav, that she does keep her earnings. V'Hilchasa Kavase de Rav, and that is the halacha. The halacha is like Rav, that she keeps the earnings. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hama'ares esbito v'girsha. Let's say you have a situation where a person gives his daughter over to be betrothed, and then the person who marries her, he divorces her. Irsa v'nisarmula, then she gets betrothed again, and she becomes a widow. So the halacha is ksubasa shalo. The halacha is that the ksuba, in these cases, both ksubas are going to go to her father. Hisiya v'girsha hisiya v'nesar mila. Now let's say it's not just an erison, it's not just a betrothal, but he actually marries her off and she's divorced, and he marries her off again and she's widowed. So the halacha in that case is ksubasa shalah. The halacha over there is that her ksuba actually goes to her, because at the moment that she has an isuin, when she actually gets married, she leaves the rishus of her father, and now she's entitled to her own ksuba. Rabbi Yehuda says harishona shalav. No, even in the case of the double marriage, in the case of the two marriages, the ksuba of the first marriage actually still goes to the father. Amrulo, they said back to him, no, misheisia ain li avir rishus. But once she has nisuin, her father has no rishus over her, so he's not even entitled to the ksuba of her first marriage. And Rashi over here explains, Ksubasa shalav, again in the first case of the erison, the ksubas go to the father. Ksuba she gova mishnei erison halalu. The ksuba she gets from both of these erisons. V'kasavar yesh ksuba la arusa. This Mishnah holds that there is a ksuba for an arusa, for a woman that is a betrothed. Uvimei narus v'katnus kamer. Again, we're talking about a situation of a girl who's either a katana, a minor, or she's a narus. So again, the father there has rishus, and he's able to collect both of those ksubas. But in the case of nisuin, of marriage, ksubasa shalah, the ksuba goes to her. To mishehi, because once she's married, Paka Rishuso, his Rishus is no longer. Uvasar Guvaina Azlina, we go by the time of the collection, the Guvaina Basar Hachihu, and the collection is coming already after this fact. She's no longer in his Rishus at the time of the collecting of the Ksuba. Velo Azlina and Basar Ksiva. Now, the other way to go would be to say that we follow the time of the writing, but we don't go by the time of the writing of the Ksuba. Lomar Hoav Arishon and Nichtava Ba'ode Rishus Av to have it, because her first, that Ksuba was written but while she was still in the Rishus of the father. So maybe you would say that first ksuba should go to the father. We're saying no, ksubasa shalah, that ksuba goes to her as well. And again, Rabbi Yehuda argued and said harishona shalav. No, the first ksuba goes to the father. Time of Mefarish Gemara, and the reason for Rabbi Yehuda will be explained in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, Taima de hisiya v'gersha hisiya v'nesar mala. The case specifically in the Mishnah is where she got married and then she was divorced, and then she got married and she was widowed. Avol nesar mala trei zimne. But let's say she was widowed 2 times in a row. Let's say I had a woman who got married, her husband died, then she got married again and her husband died. Sulo chazi lin suve. The Mishnah is alluding to the fact that at that point in time she would not be allowed to get married again. She's what we call a katlonis. She's a woman who whoever she marries is assumed that person is going to die. Ve'agav urche and along the way, the Tana over here really is following Rebbe's opinion on this issue, that even after just 2 times, it's considered a chazaka. He's the one that says that after 2 times is a chazaka. Rashi over here says, there's a presumption over here that her husbands are going to die. The Tana is specifically writing it in a way where it's not written in this kind of negative punishment kind of fashion, where she's considered a katlanis. We're trying to avoid the case of a katlonis. Now really we're trying to learn out the rules of the ksuba. We want to learn a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan, but nakat lishna didei lemistam lon karebi. But nevertheless, the language of the Mishnah alludes to Rebbe's position. The Amar Mesechet Yevamas, he says in Mesechet Yevamas, Nisis l'rishon v'meis l'sheni v'meis l'shlishi lo tinaseh. Again, if she marries twice and they both die, she shouldn't marry a third. To betray zim, they have a chazaka. In 2 times, you have a chazaka. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Again, the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Harishona Shalav. Rabbi Yehuda said that in the case where she gets married twice, that first ksuba goes to the father. The Gemara says, my time of the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? Rabba v'Rav Yosef da'amri tarvaya. Rabba and Rav Yosef both say, Hoel mishas erison zacha behenoav, because it's already from the time of erison. That's when the ksuba was written, and so that's when the father already merited in the ksuba. That's why he gets that ksuba. Rashi says, the mishas erison shalbal harishon is chayev la ksuba. From the time that she was betrothed to the first husband, that's when he's chayev to her ksuba. V'zacha bo'av, and the father gets that avol be'erison sheni. But by the second betrothal, lo zach, he doesn't get that. The mishanisas larishon, because once she actually married the first husband, paka zechuse minon. Now the father's zechus in his daughter is no longer, and therefore again he's going to get the first ksuba, but not the second ksuba. But the Gemara doesn't like this answer. The Gemara says, Meisiv Rava. Rava asks the following question. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, it says as follows. Rabbi Yehuda says, Harishona Shalav. That's the same as our Mishnah. Again, the first ksuba goes to the father. However, it continues over here as follows. Umoda Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda admits, B'ma'ore says Bito Kashi Katana. Let's say he gives his daughter over to be betrothed while she's a katana, while she's a minor. Ubagra, and then she becomes an adult. V'achar kach nisis, and then she actually gets married as a bogeres. So she'ein li avir rishos ba. So in that case, the father has no rishos. Rabbi Yehuda admits that in such a situation, even though the time of erison she was a katana, still, since she actually got married and she was a bogeres, so he has no rishos anymore. He doesn't get the ksuba. And so the Gemara says, if you're going to go with the logic we had before, that at the time of the Erusin, the Ksuba is written and therefore it belongs to the father, so Amai, so why should we say in this case that he doesn't get the Ksuba? Hachanami Lema, here also we should say, Ho'ol Mishas Erusin Zacha Beheno Avid, that at the time of the Erusin, the father merited in it. So it can't be that since the Ksuba is written at the time of Erusin, and she's a minor at the time of Erusin, therefore he gets it. That wouldn't make sense, because then when she gets married as a Bogeres, he should still get it. So that cannot be the reason why he gets the Ksuba of the first husband. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather, itmar hachi itmar. If you're going to explain, say as follows to explain Rabbi Yehuda. Rabba and Rav Yosef da'amri tarvayu, Rabba and Rav Yosef both say, Hoel uverushuso nechtavin, since it was written while it was in his reshus, that's the reason. Rashi over here says as follows. Hoel uverushuso nechtavin, since it was written in his reshus, ksuba harishon, again in this case where she gets married twice, that first ksuba was written in his reshus, shahaya lifnei hanisuin, because they would write the ksuba, it wouldn't be written immediately at the time of Erusin, it would actually be written during the Erusin, but right before the Nisuin. V'hilkach bagra kodim Nisuin, therefore if she became a Bogeres, if she was a full adult before the Nisuin, lo nichtava b'reshuso, the ksuba wasn't actually written while she was in his reshus, it was written right before that moment of the Nisuin, and therefore again, that's why in that case he doesn't get it, but that explains our Mishnah. So it's not that at the time of the Erusin she's in his reshus, that's not the relevant issue. The issue is she in his reshus at the time of the writing of the ksuba? So in our Mishnah, by that first ksuba, she was in his reshus at the time of the writing, so he gets it. But in a case where she becomes a Bogeres and then she gets married, she's no longer in his reshus, so he doesn't get the ksuba. And the Gemara continues, Umigva me'emas gavia. But if that's the case, so from when does she get to collect the ksuba? This is referring to the fact that by a ksuba there is a lien on the husband's property. So when does that lien take effect? Rashi over here says, Umigva me'emas gavia. Kalamar le'inyan zechia da'av. When it comes to the merit of the father, dachazina d'la basar erusin azlinan. We see that we don't follow the moment of the betrothal. Afilu Rabbi Yehuda, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, Kedektani, Umod Rabbi Yehuda, b'ma'aris esbitu vagar, like we just said, if she gets married as a Bogeres, he doesn't get the ksuba anymore, because we go by the moment it's written. Alma basar ksiva azal, you see, you follow the time of the writing of the ksuba. So le'inyan mitraf lekuchos, me'emas tarfa mimeshabdi. So the question now is, when you're collecting from purchasers, because again, there's a lien on all of his property, so now let's say she's going to go collect the ksuba from people who bought property from her husband. Mishas erusin dohamehishayta chaybe takanta d'rabbanan. On the one end, you could say from the moment of erusin, all of that property is under a lien. Odilmer, maybe we'll say no, at ksiva, to have a milva b'shtar lo tarfa, we have to wait till the moment where it was actually written in a document, it becomes what we call a milva b'shtar, so at that point there's a lien. So that's the question, when does she collect from? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Huna says, Monem wasayim mino erusin, in terms of collecting the basic ksuba amount, which is either 100 or 200, depending on whether or not she's a basula, that amount is collected from the time of the erusin, there's a lien on that amount in terms of his property from the time of the betrothal. But anything that was added into the ksuba, let's say he wrote into the ksuba additional payments that he's going to give her, that goes from the time of the marriage, meaning to say from the time that it is written. Rashi over here says, Mona masayim d'mitakanta d'rabbanan mechayev, that's already a takana d'rabbanan, it has to be 100 or 200, tarfa mizman erusin, that's from the time of the betrothal. In May, so gersha la'achar nisuin, let's say he dies or divorces her after the marriage, torfos l'kuchos shalachum minachasim mizman erusin veilach, she can collect from anyone who purchased the property from the time of the erusin and onward, it's from that time that there's a lien. But let's say the additional which comes from other areas, meaning to say it's not part of the takana d'rabbanan, he just added it on, the husband gave it to her. That the lien doesn't take place until the actual writing of the ksuba. And the Gemara continues, V'Ravasi Yomer, and Ravasi says, Echad zeh v'echad zeh. No, in both situations, min ha-nisuin. The collection, the lien rather, is going to come from the time of the nisuin. Rashi over here says, Echad zeh v'echad zeh min ha-nisuin, Dehi gufa mochla l'shibuda kama, v'nisratzta bizman hakosa b'shtar. Because what she's really doing is, she's mochel the original lien, because she's saying she really wants it to be from the time the ksuba is written. Once they write the ksuba, it starts from that time. It's almost like a reset. Haksuva k'chol ha-mefurish ba, Beinik Bein Tosefes, whatever is written in the ksuba, which includes the main part of the ksuba and the additional part of the ksuba, it all goes from that moment. And the Gemara continues, Umiyamar Rav Huna Hachi, but does Rav Huna really say this? Does he say that the main part of the Ksuba goes from the time of the Erusin and the Tosefes from the Nesuin? Vayitmar, but it was learned as follows. Hotzia olav shtei Ksubas. Let's say you have a situation where a woman actually produces 2 Ksubas against the husband that she wants to collect. Achas shel Masayim v'achas shel Shalosh Meos. In one of the Ksubas it says 200, and in the other one it says 300. So what do you do in that situation? V'yamar Rav Huna says, Basa ligvos Masayim. If she wants to collect the 200, so then Gova Mizman Rishon, then she collects from the first time, the first date in the Ksuba. Shlosh Meos, if she wants to collect the 300, Gova Mizman Sheni, so then she collects from the second time. Rashi over here says, Achas Shel Masayim V'hi Mukdemes, the Davka Kaseder Nakat. In other words, the 200 one has an earlier date than the one that says 300. V'yamar Rav Huna Basa Ligvos Masayim Kolomar. Ein lo elo echad mehen. Rav Huna is saying she only can use one of the Ksubas. V'yave Kocha Ligvos Eza Shetirtze, and she can use whichever one she wants. Ligvos Masayim. Now she might want to choose to collect the 200. The Nichola Bahachi, that might be better for her. Because maybe there was a lien on more property. He sold off a bunch of his property between the first Ksub and the second one, so she'd prefer to collect the first one where there's a lien on more property. The Mifkala Migvi B'Shel Shalosh Meos Nimtzu Shtar Alakuchos Kodman, because if she tries to collect using the 300 shtar, so it turns out that there's no lien on some of that property, the shtar, the document of those who purchased the property, actually proceeds, and she won't be able to get to that property. So that's why Rav Huna is saying she can choose whichever one she wants. And so the Gemara says, V'yimisa, now if it's really true that Rav Huna makes a distinction between the main money in the Ksuba and the additional money, so we should say as follows, Tigvi Masayim Mizman Rishon, she should collect 200 from the first date, Umeya Mizman Sheni, we should make a distinction between the main payment and the additional, and the 100 should be from the Zman Sheni, from the second date. As Rashi over here says, V'yimisa desavar Rav Huna Chov Rishon Mizman Rishon, V'tosefes Mizman Sheni. If Rav Huna really makes a distinction and says the original obligation goes from the first time, that original 200, which is a Takana D'Rabbanan, comes in the time of Erusin, and anything that's added on could be from a second date. So Hachanami, so in this case he should use the same logic. Tigvi Masayim Mizman Rishon, 200 should be from the first time, Umeya Mizman Sheni, and then the 100 should be from the second time. He should make the same kind of distinction he makes between the main part of the Ksubah and the Tosefes, he should make over here between these 2 Ksubas. But the Gemara continues, but according to your reasoning, if you're asking this question by the case of 2 Ksubas, I can ask further. Tigvi Chamesh Meos Kulam, let her collect all 500. She has 2 documents over here. One says 200, one says 300. Let her collect 500. Masayim Mizman Rishon, she can collect 200 from the first date. And Tlos Meya Mizman Sheni, let her collect 300 from the second date. Elachamesh Meos My Time Alo Gavia. Rather, what's the reason why she's not collecting 500, even though the total in both of her documents is 500? The reason is simple. Since he did not write to her that I'm adding on 300 to your 200, since that's not what it actually says in the Ksuba, so it's clear that it's clear that this is what he's saying to her. He's saying as follows: if you choose to collect from the first date, Gavya Masayim, collect 200. And if you're choosing from the second date, Gavya Tlos Meya, then you should collect 300. In other words, it's clear from this particular context that that's what he means by issuing for her 2 documents. And Rashi over here explains, since it doesn't say in the second Ksuba, you see that it's not to add on to the first one. The whole point over here is she doesn't get the second Ksuba unless we're going to nullify the first Ksuba, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Dalid Amid Aleph.